Hare Krishna, Namaste, Chapter 3, which is entitled as Karma Yoga, Sloka 21. Yad ācarati śreṣṭhas tad evetaro janaḥ sayat pramāṇaṁ kurute lokas anuvartate. So, in the continuation, where Janaka Maharaj has been given as an example in the previous sloka, now Krishna emphasized that particular part where how a leader should be, a great man should be, what example they should set for the common people. Whatever action in whatever manner is performed by person well known in the society, for the deep knowledge that they have in the scripture and for their practices of that particular knowledge, the common people will also tend to follow the same thing in the same manner. If the leader, the mood of the leader is given to the people, common people. If the leader is, say, leader of a country is being racist, then the followers will also have the same nature and try to apply the same thing to the other people. It's common where other will not follow a person who practices without having knowledge. The two things we need to understand from here is people will not follow a person who practices but does not have a knowledge, or who does not practice though having knowledge. It has to go hand in hand. Or the third thing is not well known. That person is not well known, though he may be of good knowledge or even practices. So three things are very important. That is, number one, others will not follow a person who practices without having a knowledge. That's number one. Number two, who does not practice though having knowledge. Yet number three is not known in the society, though he may be of good knowledge and practices. We'll see the third point because it's very important, the third point. Not that he promotes himself, but the people promote him, appreciate for his knowledge and his practices. That's how the leader is. He doesn't look for name, fame and prestige, but then people appreciate for his knowledge and practices. If someone, for example, if someone gives a lecture on Atma and body, but his activities are all towards to his body, then his words will have no effect and people will not appreciate that person. If someone practices yoga but does not follow the yama and niyama, do's and don'ts, again, that person will not be appreciated and will not be followed by the common people. And if someone is doing bhakti but does not have any love for God, then their bhakti is of no use and the people will not follow such people either. People in general always requires a leader who can teach the public by practical behavior. Because all we see is reading some stories and trying to understand how a person should be in his characters, his behaviors, habits, etc. But the question is, can we see such person in action? Can we see some people in the world today? So it's very important that we have such leaders who can be seen. A leader cannot teach the public to stop smoking if he himself smokes. Therefore, a teacher must follow the principles that's given in the Shastra and the scripture to teach the common man. The revealed scriptures, the Shastras, are there for the human society to follow them and be an ideal leader. The king or an executive head of a state the father or a school teacher, are all considered to be natural leaders of the people, especially innocent people in general. All such natural leaders have a great responsibility to their dependents. That includes parents as well. Therefore, they must be conversant with the standard books of moral and scriptural codes that they can learn from someone and start practicing it in their life so they can be an ideal leader for their dependents. In this sloka, there is one term, a word called śreṣṭhas. śreṣṭhas. The śreṣṭhas has 3 degrees. First is śreṣṭha, śreṣṭhataran, śreṣṭhataman. Śreṣṭha is a person, one who has full understanding about the scripture, the śreṣṭhas, the code, the spiritual, moral codes. That person is called śreṣṭha. śreṣṭhataran, one who practices those moral codes to the fullest. That person is called śreṣṭhataran. śreṣṭhataman, one who is praised in the world for following the practices of the śreṣṭhas, one who has such knowledge. That person is called śreṣṭhataman. In other words, one who sets an example as an ideal leader. And this is the leader that Krishna is mentioning in this particular sloka. A person who should not confuse others just because one knows much more than others. They should teach and give things where people can sustain in practicing those things for long. It is to be understood to the extent that whatever a superior, a leader does, their practices, that is the extent the people will follow. For example, some simple examples, things like if a leader gets up in the morning, the followers will get up. If the leader follows a time management, the followers will also follow the time management. If the leader speaks truth, the followers will speak truth. In other words, if the leader sleeps and expect the followers to get up, that's not going to happen. If the leader comes late and expect everyone to be on time, that's not going to happen. So things like this are very important as a leader. Whatever they set up to, whatever the extent, that is what the followers, the common people will follow. There is a question in Mahabharata where Yudhishthira Maharaj, whose older brother of Arjuna, is being challenged by an yaksha. Yaksha, a being which asked Yudhishthira a question. On what basis would you decide whether something is dharma or not? In response to this nice question, because this is a common question people usually have, that is, how do I know what is the basis to decide whether what I am doing is dharma or not? So Yudhishthira has replied that the Vedas seem to contradict one another. So is the case with many other literature. One literature will say something, another literature will say something. There's a confusion and contradiction between these statements mostly. The rishis are in many, they have their own opinions as well when they give these things. The truth concerning dharma is held quite secret, hidden. Therefore, Yudhishthira said, I only follow the path of the great souls. Very important. I only follow the path of the great soul. This statement that Yudhishthira Maharaj gave makes it very clear that the best source of valid knowledge is the practice of the great personalities, great souls. We just follow their footsteps, and that helps us to follow the dharma. So we follow the footsteps of those who have all the good qualities, the knowledge, jnana, and they practices what the knowledge that they have and what they speak. We should not follow just anyone out of compulsion, so we might become dumb, driven cattle. It's important to follow and understand this message that Krishna is giving. In this regards, there's a nice anecdote, that is, a poet went to river to have a holy dip in the sea. He had a small copper pot with him, so he doesn't want to lose this copper pot, so he dug a small pit in the sand, close by sand, and buried the vessel and built a small heap in top of that place, like a small tower, as a mark, so identification. So when he comes back, he knows where he hid the pot. Then he went to the sea to take the bath. And there's another person who followed, who came to take holy dip into the river, happened to see this poet who made this sand tower. And this person who saw this, he took this as a prerequisite and made his own sand tower next to it, next to the existing one. Likewise, others who noticed this followed this same. Soon enough, the whole beach, the area, were filled with sand towers. The poet, the first poet, when he came back, he was totally lost to identify his tower, where he kept the vessel. Therefore, we should not follow just anyone and follow whatever practices. Instead, we should only follow those who are well known to be totally knowledgeable and to be perfect in their practices. That is how good people behave. Therefore, Arjuna, you are well known in the society. Others would adapt your action whatever you do. If you try to practice Jnana Yoga, others too will endeavor to practice it. They cannot perform it to the best. Therefore, the sin of leading them will be upon you. Ultimately, you will be bereft of any means. Therefore, Karma Yoga, which you need to follow, can be easily followed by the common people, that you can set it up as an ideal leader. Yadyad ācarati śreṣṭhas tad evetaro janaḥ sayat pramāṇaṁ kurute lokas tad anuvartate. Namaste. Hare Krishna.